So Vegito was a top 3 character in the previous patch, thanks to the buffs to his 6S as well as the buffs to his Atomic Buster, his air command throw. So we're going to have to see what Bandai has done to bring the character down a couple of notches, if they've even done that. Let's first start with his auto combo change. Previously, there was only one version of Vegito's full light auto combo. So pretty much you couldn't use this for tick throws unless you used a particular assist that had low block stun in order to override 5LL's block stun, and it generally wasn't worth it. No matter how much you delayed, you just simply were not able to tick throw off this unless you whiffed the auto combo. And even then, thanks to the big range it has, it could be a little difficult, and it was fairly slow in startup. Pretty much, if you wanted to tick throw using that grab with Vegito, you would go into his barrier counter more often than not. Now, much like everybody else so far who has received this change, Vegito can now hold forward during your light auto combo and go for a tick throw. It is fairly slower compared to other tick throws that usually come in around 24 frames, with this being a 28 frame startup. Which is still faster than going for, his barrier command grab. But I wouldn't be surprised if they've made this faster, or at least fast enough as it needs to be, and still work off a 5LL tick throw. If you're dismayed that Vegito is so far receiving buffs as we go through this patch note, don't worry, we'll get to the nerfs. Previously, crouching heavy was always a move that left Vegito in place. It had a great vertical reach, but sometimes it could lack as a cross-up option, or an anti-cross-up option, I should say. As you can see right here, fairly stubby. So, despite the fact that GT Goku went for a cross-up and Vegito was able to, quote-unquote, read it in this example, Vegito wasn't actually able to anti-air here, exposing him to potentially being punished. Now, Vegito has a version of his 2H where if you hold forward during the input, he'll advance forward. So, this is the old version, and this is the new version. He leaps forward considerably more. So, in that same situation that we looked at with GT Goku, Vegito will now actually lunge forward and reach. This is basically just there so that Vegito's anti-airs are a bit buffed. We've seen this change with Cell, a couple other characters in earlier patches. So, okay, again, y'all are freaking out. Why is he getting buffed? Chill. Nerfs are coming, I promise. Let's look at the next move. Previously, standing unique attacks, Gatlings were a little more restricted. You could go into his 1, 2, or 3S. His 5 heavy, or his 2 heavy. But you could not go into 6S, the full screen tracking version of the move. So this was one of the removals that they did when they basically rebalanced 6S to, instead of being this fixed to one position, they made it this tracking Ki Blast move. They took away the ability for Vegito to Gatling into it as well, just as like a give and take kind of a thing. Now, in this patch, Bandai has restored the ability for Vegito to Gatling standing unique attack into his 6S. This should open up, pretty much like all the old combo routes and stuff that he was able to do before that utilize this trick, being able to sort of double hit confirm this, for example. So any sort of new or old combo, I should say, that worked off of these kind of cancels before should be able to work for you here. It also means that, there's just more mental stack here. So instead of you strictly looking for him advancing forward with, 6S or 5H, something like that, he can instead just, double tick pressure you off of this. The same change is also applied to standing unique attacks forward version. Where you do this, you can now go into this version as well. So if you're up close with him, I don't really see the same utility here. Like, sure, you can do it, but like, at what range should you do it? Let's go ahead and look into that by looking at the changes to 6S specifically. Now, the reworking of 6S was probably the biggest buff that Vegito received in the last major balance patch. So, if we look at it, it's a 14-frame full-screen tracking Ki Blast move that was -4 on block, so very easy for Vegito to just safely kind of poke out with this and not really suffer any repercussions for it. You couldn't Gatling it into anything that would really work outside, of course, of the newly added 3S, and the damage that you would get was quite high. meterless 4.3k damage off of a 14-frame full-screen tracking key blast was genuinely a lot, and this was like the cornerstone of Vegito's neutral in the previous patch. You could cover this with an assist, so if you were autopiloting your pressure and you whiff something like this and were far more negative, well, you know, Android 17 barrier, something that Yasha and Hikari would play, would basically keep him safe. And if you were really good, you could also just hit confirm it. Basically looking for the red in the opponent's life bar to then go for your follow-up. It was, you know, sometimes failable, but certainly a practical thing that you could do. And so, this being such a strong option for Vegito, definitely needed to see some nerfs, and I would have argued for a reversion of the nerf, but the main reason it was created to be like this was to combine with the buffs to his EX Atomic Buster attack, where, you know, since it throws the opponent full screen and gives you a substantial ground bounce, they wanted to make it so that you could combo off of this with the newly reworked 6S. This was sort of like the core changes for Vegito that kept him as a very strong character and pretty much put him into a top 3 status in the previous patch. So how did Bandai go around nerfing 6S? Well, they didn't reduce the startup, but if you look at the frame advantage right here, they've shot its recovery. So they've increased the delay of the move itself. So now, if I block this, instead of Vegito being -4, he's now -15. In addition to that, because you can now Gatling from 6S into 5S, all throughout this recovery, if you try to press 6S again, you get 5S instead. So instead of you being able to sort of like spam these options out, keeping the opponent constantly in check with this move, now they can see when you stop, have time to reposition themselves or attack first, and try to interrupt all the endless 6S pokings of the move. And if you're too soon with it, well, then you get this 5S that's just whiffing in front of your face. So it's actually a pretty smart nerf to this move, just sort of reducing its strength as a neutral poke tool. Now, of course, if you do try to super dash, he will be able to 2H you. If he immediately goes from 5S into his 5S, or 6S into 5S, he will still be able to 2H you. There I was a little bit slow with it. And even there, like, I didn't get my timing for 5H correct. 2H, I should say. So, you know, a lot of these things are still going to be kind of the same, but how abusable this move is as a neutral tool is certainly no longer the case before, and I really like this change. Like, yes, it's a strong option, but now there's a downtime to this move, a reasonable downtime where the opponent has time to reposition, time to counterattack, and other things like that. So a really good change, in my opinion, all the while, of course, still preserving its combo potential. Now, they did also hurt the damage scaling of the move as well. So previously, we were able to break about 4.3k damage off of this attack. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like now. Now 3550, so about 800 damage lost on the combo that we got right here. So Vegito is just doing less damage off of this move overall as well, which means that maybe instead of getting to 2-touch you and only investing a single bar, he has to dump another bar into you. Or, you know, kill thresholds where he didn't have meter before are no longer going to apply because he needs that extra meter to kill you off of some of these hits, slowing down the snowball potential of this move and making it more difficult for him to touch you off of this sequence. So, like, you know, for example, think about it, right? We were able to do 4.3k damage off of this move. Now we're doing 7,000 damage. Like, instead of just needing 2 level 1s to kill you, the man needs a level 3 somewhere in there, or maybe even 3 level 1s depending on your DHCs. This is a really good change because, yes, it's still a strong neutral tool, but if you're able to defend against it, you have time to reposition. Vegito isn't as easily able to spam this against you, and if he does hit you with it, his reward is dramatically reduced. These are really good changes that should bring Vegito's neutral back in line. So instead of being a full screen monster right now, he's got a good full screen poke, and that's probably about it. Now, the next nerf to look at with Vegito is to Spiral Heal Shot, where they've increased the delay for the ground version. Previously, it was about -4, -5 on block for all versions, meaning that this was a safe option for Vegito to use. Additionally, you know, this also meant that, you know, you could pretty much pick up combos from it as well, but let's go ahead and see how it looks in the new version of the game. Let's also check out one more thing here, where you're able to pretty easily link off of a 2M using the EX version in mid-screen. So now let's take a look at Spiral Heel Shot's new delay. As you can see, there's about like 2 more frames of delay here. So instead of being like -5, Vegito is actually just -7. So if Vegito does this in the corner, you actually just get a jab punish on him here, regardless if it's a 7-frame jab or a 6-frame jab. This also should mean that Vegito is less likely to catch you with 5M spacing traps here, right? So if I'm GT Goku and I mash 5LL against him as a counterattack option, right? Yeah, it's still going to catch for GT Goku here, but, you know, instead of that, if GT Goku just goes for the EX Lariat attack instead, so let's go ahead and reset this. Heavy, quarter circle forward, right? Like, Vegito is just going to get caught out right here, and that might have been the case before. Of course, Vegito still has options, but, you know, whereas, you know, before he could maybe have been able to safely backdash against some of these special moves, maybe now he gets caught by these special moves. You're going to have to lab your characters and this specific situation against Vegito to really get your grasp of how it's changed, but it definitely has changed. A couple frames difference can matter for a lot of these situations, and overall, Vegito should be a lot less safe. Now, in terms of his combo routing, he pretty much should still have all the same combos thanks to the hit stun, you know, still being the same. But, you know, maybe some pickups are a little bit different. And maybe they're not. Maybe your timing will just have to adjust a little bit here. The big point here is that Spiral Heel Shot is a lot less safe on block than it was before, and you should explore those situations to get your new understanding for it now. The final change to look at with Vegito is to the heavy version of Atomic Buster, his air-to-air grab. So, if you got scooped by this special move, this really good anti-air special grab, thanks to the changes with 6S, you died, pretty much. If you were maximizing the combo here, you could break 5k damage with a single super of investment here for Vegito. So taking 5k damage off of just, you know, getting snatched in neutral like this was definitely another reason why Vegito was so strong in the previous version of Dragon Ball FighterZ. Now let's take a look at the new damage scaling on Heavy Atomic Buster. Now, obviously, once you get the base damages of the super involved, you can kind of see that the damage drop-off isn't as high as you might think in the first place, but doing the same combo as the previous version of the game that we just looked at, Vegito lost about 400, 500 damage on this particular combo, which, again, can matter in the long run. It's still a really good starter for Vegito, but he's not going to have the same damage output as he used to off of one of his best neutral tools before. And again, this could be the difference between Vegito needing to only dump a single bar to kill you and having to invest even more meter to kill you. So it could matter depending on the situation. Despite getting a few new toys to play with in this patch, I would argue that Vegito overall, especially compared to the rest of the cast, is a nerfed character. His strongest tools are still within his kit, and they're just as good as what they used to do, but now they're a little bit weaker, both in terms of the reward that they give, thanks to the scaling on 6S and Heavy Atomic Buster, but also just in terms of 6S's overall safety, completely gutting his full screen play to just being a 6S spam bot, you know, kind of annoyingly poking at you, to now having to rotate through some other options and giving the opponent a chance to reposition in neutral. So these are some really good changes that I do like for Vegito. He does have a few compensation buffs, you know, buffs to his cross-up anti-air game, thanks to the change to crouching heavy, a new tick throw, thanks to the changes to his 5LLL. But outside of that, like, this is a weaker version of the character in a version of Dragon Ball FighterZ where pretty much everybody else got some substantial buffs. Is he, like, dramatically worse than what he was before? No, he just simply is a little worse in some areas and does a little less damage off of some of his best starters. But in so many other situations, like all of his combos, especially like off of the like very common starters like 5M, those are all the same, and he still has his great damage output, still has his great mix-up and pressure game, so he still is a very strong character. Is he still top 3 material? I wouldn't say so, but I could argue that he's definitely top 10, and he's maybe still top 5. And if you've been playing Vegito before, well, you can still play him and enjoy him as he was now, and I'm certainly probably still consider sticking with him, thanks to the fact that I play the Hikari Yasha team still, and that's kind of like the team I've still kind of put the most time into over the last couple of years. But I don't think he's going to be like as defining as he was before. We'll just have to see what other characters and their buffs are able to do versus Vegito and his nerfs in this patch.